Hey folks, welcome back to another Dice Tower preview. I'm Mark, and today we're taking a look at Iron Thunder, which is brought to you by Cheswick Games. It's for 2 to 4 players, ages 16 and up, and games generally run about 45 to 120 minutes. Iron Thunder is a World War II strategy game where you can command tanks, infantry, and manage resources to lead your nation to victory. The world is at war, and your nation needs you. Are you up to the challenge? Iron Thunder supports 3 different battle modes. First of these is Blitz. Simply jump in your tank and battle it out. No resource management to get in the way and no restrictions on ammo or fuel. Weather effects are also optional as well. A great way to learn the basics, or just a way to engage in quick battles. The realistic mode is really where the game shines, the heart of the system. All the rules apply. You will manage and use your buildings, resources, and deal with weather on every turn. Then we have the attrition battle mode, where the battle is restricted to 3 to 5 phases, or whatever you choose. If there is no clear winner by the end of the last phase, then each player gets points from occupied buildings, for units on the board, and points for tokens in your stash. This will determine the winner, another great way to engage in shorter battles. As you can imagine, winning is related to removing your opponent from the board, destroying or occupying the enemy's headquarters, destroying all your enemy's armored units, or simply destroying enough where your opponent only has 5 units or less on the battlefield. So this game has a real sandbox feel to it. There is no scenario set up, there's no mission set up, it's up to you how you engage in battle. You do have deployment zones on either side of the board where you'll have your command headquarters and where you'll deploy troops as well as tanks. These all have to be in conjunction with the command headquarters as you deploy them to the field. Then around the board, you have different buildings to gather resources. You'll have things like trees that your infantry can move into that will give them armor. But on the other side of this and on the other side of the board is a different type of area. You're gonna have snow to deal with, which has its own set of complications. But on the board itself, you'll see octagons. This is where tanks will move. There are smaller squares where your infantry can move. Also, they can move around much more nimble, so to say, but only 1 unit can fit inside the square. Other than that, you have a group of 3 that are moving around. They'll move around into bigger hexes, but that's just kind of the general setup and things you're going to be doing. Each side is going to have their own tank cards, their own resource board. Again, this is for the realistic mode, and there's a set of cards to give you special abilities in battle. So there are 4 different types of tanks you can use on the battlefield. We have light, which is more nimble, get you around the battlefield more quickly. We have medium, and then we have heavy tanks that pack more of a punch, but are slower to move. And then we've got tank destroyers that really bring the firepower. Now, each of these tanks have their own card, which different stats, and on the far left, you'll see your health. Every tank has 3 health. You try to knock it down to destroy it. Next to that is your experience. Experience is great. When you take out a tank, you'll move that experience up, and that experience will let you augment how much damage based on the dice you roll when you go into battle. So it really does add a lot to what you're capable of and what the tank can do. Now, in the middle of the card is a picture of your tank. It also shows you what your armor is from the front and from the sides when the tank takes a hit. So you'll deduct that from dice rolls when you engage in battle. And then on the far right at the bottom shows how much fuel is needed for the tank to move. Now, every time the tank rotates 1 space or moves forward 1 space, you'll have to spend fuel to do that. No matter what you're doing or engaging in or how far you move that tank, you'll always spend the fuel for that particular turn. Above the fuel cost is a series of stats. At the very top is a symbol, so you know which tank you're using when you engage in battle. And then below that, you'll have action points, how much the tank can move and maneuver around the battlefield. And then you have your range, how far can you fire? And then finally, which colored dice you're gonna use when you attack with. You've got 3 different types. You've got green, yellow, and red. And as you'd expect, green is a little bit lighter on the attack, and yellow a little heavier, and red really brings the firepower when you roll these. Now, these are custom dice, so keep that in mind, as this is, again, a prototype. On your tank board, you'll also be tracking the resources that you use for ammo and for fuel. For fuel, you'll just be removing it from the board, and you can't move the tank again until you resupply. So to keep that in mind, and some tanks require more fuel than others. And then you've got your shells or your ammo, and those are placed at the bottom of the board, but then you'll have to load the big cannon on your tank by putting that ammo on the tank to represent that you're doing that. And then once fired, it is removed as well. Again, this is a resource management game in this realistic mode where you have to be mindful of the resources you need and equip your tanks at the right time. And you also have these command cards that you can also use resources for. In the bottom left corner of the card will show what resources it requires. They're all very descriptive and explain exactly what you can do. Now you'll see ones that have a yellowed border or yellow-black border, and these are only for when you're attacked. Then you can play one of these cards, pay the resource cost, and do what it says when someone fires at you. It is a really interesting back and forth and exchange. These cards do come into play quite frequently. Do not neglect them. Definitely use your resource board to gather them through the game because they are going to aid you pretty much in everything you're doing. So, and definitely having these counterattack type cards is key to winning the battle. So let's talk resources, since that's a lot of what you're going to be doing as well. You'll see that there are buildings that are going to generate things like command points, the little lightning bolt, or fuel. So if you occupy those with infantry, you can generate those resources. Command points are crucial because it's going to allow you to generate other types of resources. So you'll spend those tokens on your resource board in order to generate fuel, ammo, repairs, or get new cards, those battlement cards, or generate more tanks, bring them into the battlefield, or infantry. Lots of great ways to do that with those command points, but you'll set it up or you'll start to generate those and you won't get those resources until the next phase. So it is crucial, it is a process in order to get resources. It is finite in the middle of battle. Across the top of your resource board, you'll be tracking how many units you actually have out in the battlefield. And then there's a series of flags. The flags are dependent every round or every phase. You'll roll a weather dice. And sometimes it's 3, showing really bad weather, which limits you on how much resources you can generate, only giving you 3 flags, 3 units you can use. Anything above that, 4, 5, 6, will give you more advantage in battle, obviously giving you more flags, so you can use more units. And once you engage and move a unit, you'll place the flag there to show it's expired for that particular round or phase. So that is a great way to keep track of what you're doing on the board for sure. Now, your infantry don't really have their own little card, but they just have generic stats, basically. They have 1 health, so 1 hit takes them out, basically. They don't have any armor unless they're in the trees, which they get a benefit from hiding, or being undercover, I should say. And then they get 2 AP on every turn. So you can move them as a group of 3, or you can move them individually, especially if you're trying to occupy a building. You want to move into a building and take control of it. Also, moving into command headquarters, you can go in and attack and so forth. So how you use those infantry to support your tanks is really key in this game. So gameplay here is very straightforward. The game is designed to be a more accessible type of war game. And you'll always be rolling dice to see who goes first, who has initiative. You'll be rolling dice to check your weather and place how many command points you have in order to control units around the battlefield. Always keeping in mind when you control units that you use the appropriate action points for that unit. Maybe you're moving your tank, and tanks always move in the direction they're facing, and they also fire in that direction. So you'll either have to rotate the tank or rotate the turret in order to line up your shot. Or maybe you're engaging in battle, but you'll always spend the resources from that unit in order to do so, leaving it without fuel for a time, so you'll have to resupply. So you continue this way back and forth until you've run out of your command points and the flags are out on the board. Then you go to the resupply phase, and where you'll gather resources that maybe you started generating, or you'll gather resources from the different buildings that you have occupied and setting up different resources to generate on that next turn. So it really is that simple. And of course, you're always at the end then rolling the weather dice again and getting ready for that next phase or that next battle. And you hope to be the player that has been the most efficient in commanding their troops to win the battle. Alright folks, just a reminder once again, this has been a Dice Tower paid preview, and everything you've seen here has been in prototype form, so keep a close eye on the campaign for any changes that still may occur. Now with that said, this has that feel from when I was a kid playing with army men, but I like how accessible it is and how quick and easy battles are. I mean, you look at the dice that your tank or your infantry is going to roll, you roll the dice, you check the value versus their armor, and that's the damage you do. It's really that straightforward. I like that, it's quick to play, quick to maneuver, but there's lots of strategy about how you move your tanks in, when you take buildings, how you manage those resources. So all of that comes into this really interesting play for sure. But folks, ultimately, if this looks like something of interest to you, I'm sure they'd appreciate your support. So I think that's it from me, and until next time, we'll see you at the table.